As you can see, is here with the papers as well. Of course, the main story in the international papers is that shocking win by Democrat Doug Jones, defeating Republican Roy Moore, haunted by those allegations of sexual misconduct.
That's right, Stuart. We're going to start with the front page of Alabama's biggest paper, the Birmingham Daily News. They say Alabama rejects Moore, elects Democrat Jones. The paper calls it a stunning victory that was aided by scandal, as you said, after multiple accusations that Roy Moore pursued sexual relationships with girls one as young as 14. The paper also says Deep Red Alabama leans blue because it is the state's first Democratic senator in 25 years. And they say that this race, it really ends huge suspense. Alabama really knew that all eyes were on them. And in a front page column from the paper, the writer John Archibald says this result is first and foremost a message to women. In the days leading up to the election, Roy Moore's accusers were treated terribly by many. He says they were called liars and whiners and in many cases worse things. And he says Alabama ultimately rejected that behavior. Alabama stood for victims, it stood for women, and it stood for compassion, according to this writer. A lot of pride coming out of Alabama today, it has to be said. There's a cartoon from the same paper, which I should say ultimately did endorse the Democratic candidate. This cartoon pretty much sums it up. We see an image of Doug Jones and the message, "We are not Roy Moore." So that's the message from Alabama.
It's not just in Alabama, is it? Left-wing media right across the country kind of basking in this win.
They really are. A lot of them are kind of rubbing it in the face of Roy Moore. Not necessarily the most mature reaction, I guess you could say, but I wanted to show you this one front page of the New York Daily News. They say, screw you and the horse you rode in on, a message to Roy Moore. That is Roy Moore and his horse Sassy, who he allegedly rode in to the polling station the other day. Now, the New York Times calls Jones's win a triumph for decency and common sense in a state that seemed at risk of abandoning both. His win narrows the Republican Senate majority. They now have 51 seats versus 49 for Democrats. And the New York Times says it's a message of rebuke to President Trump. Lots of left-wing papers interpreting it that way. The right-wing paper, the Wall Street Journal, though, says it's a message actually for former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, who was one of Roy Moore's main supporters. They say that it was actually an act of political hygiene. Voters were rejecting Roy Moore. They were not rejecting the entire GOP agenda. The paper says the win is actually good news for the Republican Party because had Roy Moore won, well, they would have had to deal with him becoming a symbol of, sexual harassment. Now they don't have to worry about that anymore, and Republicans might actually have a better chance of keeping the Senate majority that they already have in next year's midterm elections.
Yeah, Roy Moore's defeat then being heralded as a victory as well in the fight against sexual assault, capping off what's been a really big year, really, for women's rights.
Yeah, a bad year in many ways, but definitely, a big year. Women's rights have definitely been in the spotlight, and it led feminism, actually, to be the most looked up word in Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. And so the dictionary has announced that they're making it their word of the year. The first spike came in January during the Women's March. They also saw spikes surrounding the Me Too movement and with the release of Wonder Woman. And it was also helped in part by Trump's advisor, actually, Kellyanne Conway, who declared that she rejected feminism for being anti-male. So I think it might be a good time to look into the definition of feminism to remind ourselves what that actually is. According to Merriam-Webster, it is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes.
Now, recent news stories, of course, have reminded us we still have quite a long way to go. In Portugal, a woman's independence has actually been used to argue against her in a domestic violence case.
All right, this is an interesting case. You can read more about it in the Correio Internacional. A court in Portugal recently acquitted a man of domestic violence charges because it ruled that a woman who is not reliant on her husband can't be a victim of domestic violence. Judges at this court said if she was so strong, she should have just left the house. So kind of an extreme case of victim blaming. The Correio Internacional points out that news outlets in Portugal have been pretty outraged by this. They say the judge's ideas there are riddled with stereotypes. And it comes after another ruling in Portugal in October in which a court said that they understood the feelings of a man who beat his wife because she had humiliated him by cheating on him.
Sexism then helping men avoid jail time in Portugal. Meanwhile, in Egypt, a female pop singer has been given 2 years in prison. This is for a pretty racy music video.
Right, this music video shows her in a classroom rather suggestively eating an apple and a banana. It's sexual, but I have to say it's nothing that Britney Spears didn't already do in the 90s. The Egyptian court, though, found that it incited debauchery. The director of the clip got the same 2-year sentence, and you can see behind me in The Guardian the photo of this singer, Shema. She's a little-known singer, only 21 years old. She apologized on Facebook for the clip, said she never expected to see such a backlash for it. Although she arguably, shouldn't have had to apologize, The Guardian points out that Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has been using morality laws to crack down on artists of all kinds.
And finally, we're going to talk about stars. Not, though, Star Wars.
That's right, Stuart. Now, the latest Star Wars film is coming out today in many theaters across Europe, but I think we should talk about the real stars, actually, because the film coincides with another celestial event, which is the Geminids meteor shower. NASA's website, you can see, they say, "Heads up, Earthlings, the annual Geminids meteor shower is here. It will be shooting stars will be visible in places around the world overnight between Wednesday and Thursday. It's going to be the best meteor shower so far this year because the moon is a crescent, which means it won't be polluting the sky. NASA says it's a good time to bundle up, go outside, and let the universe blow your mind."
Certainly be bundling up. We shall all be looking. Thank you very much, Alison. Alison with the papers on France 24. Morning.